Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. My husband and I lived happily married for over 9 years after having dated for more than 4. We went through quite a lot of things together, and we were there for each other when our lives basically crumbled to the ground because of familial affairs. I don't think there was ever a day when we were together that I paused to think what my life would end up being like without him in it, nor did I ever dare to imagine it with anyone else. I suppose that's what made it so surprising. On top of how abruptly things changed and how unusually irrational his decision to file for divorce was. There was a time period during our marriage in which we were slightly distant because of how hectic the nature of our work is. But it wasn't something abnormal or worth even arguing about. It was neither the first time it happened, nor was it aggressive or unpleasant. It's just that things weren't as hot as they were usually, and we both knew it had nothing to do with the relationship, or at least I did, because apparently it was reason enough for him to want to end our nearly perfect marriage. One day we were married and struggling with building our individual financial empires, and the next I had gotten a call from my lawyer telling me that I just received divorce papers from my husband and that he was only allowing communication through and with the presence of our lawyers. Although the events that led to our divorce and the few that followed which revolved our relationship were extremely strange, I found it in my heart to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume my lack of full understanding of the situation. It felt better to live and deal with the consequences of our divorce, thinking he had solid reasoning to back up his request, not just something as stupid and minute as a small period of cold air between us that resulted from our professions. I lived with it, and I was willing to maintain that mentality for the rest of my days because it allowed me to move on without resentment or any hard feelings. I was fine with everything really, but things just couldn't stay peaceful and calm now, could they? Not with the reason that ended the marriage, which although I chose to deny the presence of something more profound and certainly more deviant, the nature of what ended our relationship was vigilant, and it was only a matter of time before it came back to bite me and my ex in the ace. A few months after the divorce, nearly a year since I had last laid eyes on my ex or spoken to him, I got a message from him in which he was extremely friendly, positive, and passive. I didn't want to make the air awkward or reflect any negativity, so I just went along as smoothly as I could, asking about his family and well-being. Silly I even assumed the reason behind our friendly interactions was that our marriage had ended without violence or arguments. I was also learning to be fine with the idea of befriending my ex-husband. That's it, befriending him for the sakes of adulating, and that's where it ends. But of course, as I said, with the nature of his reasoning to end our romantic relationship, there was no room for peace and quiet. Things escalated very quickly from passive and non-transactional when he called me one day confessing things to me, requesting and justifying things that blew me away and that still puzzle me to this day. He had the guts to call me in early morning and ruin that day and many weeks to come by informing me that the reason our marriage ended wasn't because he felt the spark had died and unhappiness was afloat. He brought up his friend's wife's name and referred to her as the mother of his child. He did so right before asking me to get involved in raising and providing for the child, which was the reason my marriage ended. He had the audacity to tell me I'm obliged to help out with things, especially considering the fact that the friend who he betrayed by knocking up his wife refused to help support or even care or interact with their child of deceit. I'm not gonna lie, there was such an urge within me to agree with the friend. But it seems as though I was so taken aback by the audacity and ruthlessness that my ex had mustered up to walk up to me with such claims and requests. Not only did he end our marriage for reasons other than the ones he swore to in the house of law, but he also cheated on me multiple times, got someone pregnant when he refused to try having kids with his wife for professional purposes, but he was basically asking me to take in and parent the child. That was the reason my nearly perfect marriage ended. There are so many things that went through my head when he was talking to me. I simply wasn't absorbing anything about what he was telling me. Everything about the whole interaction was built and based on wrong actions and terrible decisions, which had nothing to do with me. He was entitling me to be a family member to something that was the whole reason I'm struggling to interact with people or understand why my marriage was over. I was very surprised and extremely disappointed, to say the least. I didn't really say anything that day. I just let him ramble on and on about how much he'd like for me to be involved and help out with raising the child, making sure to refer to me as the only family she'll ever have, seeing that both his and the mother's families had cut them off when they realized the gravity of their actions and the damage they had caused to their spouses. Funny thing is, he was giving me the reasons for which I should hang up and never ever talk to him again in a way that he thought was the best to convince me to mother his child of disarray. There was nothing about the fact that our marriage ended for more than just lack of emotions that pissed me off. He was explaining that basically the only reason so many people's lives were ruined was because they made a stupid decision to sleep together and then backed it up with the worst possible series of concerning and unthoughtful decisions. I'm not very sure how this child is going to grow up or if it should even be left in the hands of people who would so recklessly do something so irrational. And I would truly be lying to say that I care. I decided to leave this whole situation behind me and not look back on the ex or his baby mama or his love child or whatever. Everything that happened is their doing, and I shouldn't be feeling any guilt or need for reconsideration. It's all too obvious and clear, yet I can't help but feel sorry for the little one, as it saddens me to imagine that she was my daughter and had to be left with such people. I'm not sure where I stand or if this will ever fully leave my mind, but sharing it here would really help out, especially if I get more opinions and perspectives on the matter. Not the a-hole. Well, I think you did the right thing. Leaving the whole thing to be in the past is probably the best service you can offer yourself and those people. I know you thought you knew your husband, and by that I mean you think he'd make for a good father. But the truth is that you really didn't know him as much as you'd like to think. You assumed the best in him and even considered gaslighting yourself to justify his stupid actions with something smart. He's not smart, he's impulsive and stupid, and the child that resulted from that marriage is going to grow up just fine and realize that. Not the a-hole. You did the right thing. Don't look back or try to get involved with your ex or his wife and her child. They won't do you any good, and it'll only motivate them to slack their responsibilities on you, since that's what I think their plan is by contacting you. They're very clearly only now starting to realize the gravity of what they did, and they don't think they'll handle it, which is why your ex reached out to you and asked for your help and support. That doesn't mean you have to respond positively because you think you're responsible for making the child's life better. That's exactly what they're trying to do, guilt you into taking care of their problems. So don't fall into their traps and don't worry about the child. There are plenty of systems and means put into making sure parents who aren't competent enough aren't allowed to be just that, and none of those include nor rely on you. Not the a-hole. I think you should move on from everything and leave this dark past behind you. The whole thing happened because two adults did terrible deeds, and to think that a child would be a result of that and would have to grow up feeling miserable or unhappy is truly devastating. But it's not your responsibility to fix or to try to change anything about it. My advice is that you dissociate now before you get too emotionally invested and end up ruining good things for yourself and your possible future family. You deserve better, so find better and stop reflecting on the past. Next story. This actually happened last night, but it has been bugging me since it happened. I feel like the a-hole, but I also don't. Long story short, I'm separated from my soon-to-be ex-husband. We were together for 10 years, married for 6. We have been separated for about 2 months after it came to light that he was cheating on me with a 19-year-old and broke his 4-year sobriety. We have 2 small children, 5 years and 11 months. I also have an 11-year-old stepdaughter. My ex and his ex-wife's marriage was annulled before I ever came into the picture. For the entire time I was with my husband, he paid $900 a month in child support, sometimes more even. When my oldest was 2 weeks old, he gave his ex $3,000 because she was several months behind on rent and was facing eviction. With my stepdaughter, it was always on us to get her new school clothes, supplies, shoes, etc. Her mother would just forget. With my husband just up and abandoning us, it has put me in a financial bind. I'm on a fixed income student stipend and only receive $1,300 a month. I have filed for child support through my state, but who knows when I will begin receiving it. Last night, out of the blue, his ex messaged me. Apparently, when my husband abandoned us, he stopped paying his child support too. He has not paid for November, nor will probably pay for December either. His ex asked me to pay his back in current child support. She and her new partner have one child already, and she's expecting again. She told me how they were counting on that money to catch up on bills, take care of Christmas. I told her no, there's no way I can do that. I have my own 2 children to take care of. I'm barely surviving as it is. While my ex is still paying the mortgage, I'm responsible for utilities and such. I can't help that he decided to not pay child support. She called me selfish and a-hole and accused me of not caring about my stepdaughter. Threatened legal action to make me pay. At that point, I rolled my eyes and stopped responding. Part of me feels bad that I can't help her because I know my stepdaughter is the one who will suffer. But part of me is like, well, tough luck, because both she and her partner work full-time. I'm a full-time student stay-at-home mom who was thrust into single motherhood by my ex having his midlife crisis and just effing off. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. She needs to pursue child support through the courts and get it from your ex. This is not your problem. She and her new partner should not be counting on child support for your stepdaughter to use for their own needs and their other children's needs. You and his previous ex should be working together to make sure he pays all of his child support. Be sure to have child support paid through the courts, not directly. Not the a-hole. It sounds as if your ex is stiffing both you and his previous ex. Not your job to make up for his failure to pay his ex's child support. And you are going to find yourself in the same boat because your ex can't keep it in his pants. Best thing to do is just put his ex on the read and figure out how to get by with your kids having a deadbeat dad. Sounds like you're taking the right steps of getting formal child support for your kids, and you really need to get a custody order in writing so that he doesn't show up one day and demand to have the kids while he goes on a drunken driving spree. Forget both exes for the moment. As someone who went through a nasty divorce where he handled the bills, you need to make sure your mortgage is being paid for. Call the lender, do whatever it takes. Is the house in both your names? Because if he's not paying and the house gets foreclosed, that's going to impact your credit, possibly even job prospects for years to come. You also need to do a credit check on yourself and make sure he's not opening accounts in your name. I know you're on a fixed income, but I can't stress how important this is. You may need some of your limited funds for a lawyer, unless your school provides legal assistance for full-time students. Some do. Otherwise, research women's assistance programs in your state. A lot provide free or low-cost financial counseling. Next story. I really feel like I just stepped out of a soap opera, and I might be in the center of it as the a-hole, using a throwaway account. I, 28 female, work at a small local sports bar. I have a co-worker, 25 female, who we shall call Amanda. All the names will be changed for this post. Amanda starts dating one of our regulars, Nick, not quite 2 years ago. After a few months, she got pregnant and they got engaged pretty quickly after that. The baby is now 6 months old and Amanda has 2 other kids, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, each from a different father as well. Nick was planning to adopt both of them after the wedding, as both of their dads basically refuse to be in the picture and are willing to give up parental rights. Amanda and Nick were supposed to get married in 2 weeks. However, about a week ago, Nick came in one of my bar shifts and seemed really down. I didn't pry, but made friendly small talk, and after a few beers, he told me an alarming confession. One of the other regulars, Adam, reached out to Nick on social media. Apparently, Adam and Amanda had been messing around at the same time that she and Nick were dating, and Amanda ghosted him just before announcing her engagement. Basically, Adam wanted Nick to be aware that the baby may not be his before going through with the wedding and the adoption. I was stunned and told Nick that Adam is a bit unstable to begin with and might be lying out of jealousy as he's always had a thing for Amanda. I asked if he had confronted Amanda and he said no, and he told me he was at a loss as to what to do. I basically said he had 2 choices. Either he loves Amanda and the baby enough to not care, or if he needed to know for sure, and answer was a paternity test away. Well, he went with a paternity test, and guess who's not the father? After getting the results and confronting Amanda, Nick called off the wedding. According to another regular who was close with Nick, Amanda admitted to knowing the whole time, but went along with the baby being Nick's because he's financially stable and she knew he would do the right thing and marry her. Word about the conversation between Nick and I got around, and Amanda has been texting me about how I ruined her life and I had no business butting in. She claims if I hadn't suggested the paternity test, Nick would have never gotten one and she'd have a husband and a father for her kids. And I feel like she might be right. I absolutely could have minded my own business and told Nick I had no advice for him. And I do feel bad that now she will be struggling with 3 small children on her own, being a single mother myself. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Nick deserves to know. Amanda did a horrible thing, especially if she knew and had an inkling the child was not Nick's. In this day and age, they can be ordered online, or heck, Walmart even carries them. It's a very simple procedure with a pretty fast turnaround. Imagine what would have happened in 10 years when the child needed a kidney and Nick found out at that point. Seems Nick dodged the bullet and a cannonball with Amanda. Not the a-hole. Amanda is experiencing the consequences of her actions. Nick and Adam made unfortunate choices in who they had unprotected intercourse with. But everyone deserves the truth and to be able to make life choices based on facts. This would have come out eventually and Nick would be devastated, both emotionally and financially. Best it happened now. Not the a-hole. Amanda is the one that ruined her life. All you did was offer advice after he told you what was up. He didn't have to take it. But it's good that he did now, instead of always wondering and later finding out after getting married and adopting the other children. Next story. My wife, 27 female, and I, 36 male, were having Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house last Thursday. My wife has this weird habit of eating with a teaspoon all the time, instead of a regular spoon, so when she and my mom were setting the table, she took a teaspoon for herself. Anyways, when she was eating with it, my dad pointed it out to her and asked, "Why on earth are you eating with that tiny teaspoon? You know, eating in tiny amounts isn't going to help you lose those extra pounds you have." I saw it as a harmless joke at the time and laughed along with it. So did my wife at the time, but when we were going back home, she seemed annoyed with me, and at first I didn't get why until she told me it was because I let my dad joke about her weight and didn't defend her. She has had some trouble with her weight lately, but I didn't think she'd get so angry over the joke. At the time, she seemed chill about the joke and it really seemed harmless. If someone joked about me that way, I wouldn't take it to heart. Personally, I don't think her reaction was reasonable, and I don't get why she's still annoyed at me for it. Edit. Yeah, I get it. I'm an a-hole. But how's it reasonable for my wife to still be mad at me 6 days later when I've apologized multiple times and I wasn't even the one who made the joke? You're the a-hole. She seemed chill at the time because she was in shock and uncomfortable with confronting your dad over his comment and over your silence on the matter. A joke is something that is considered to be funny by all parties, and as she never actually thought it was funny, means it wasn't a joke. That wasn't a joke. That was a really insensitive comment your dad made to your wife. I bet your wife laughing was one of those placating laughs women are conditioned to do when men say insensitive crap that they think is funny. Even so, you could have said something to your dad about his mean-spirited comment. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. Women are sensitive about their weight in the same way men are sensitive about jokes referring to the size of their private parts in general. Your wife was a good sport, but your dad was an a-hole, and you were too for laughing along. And who the hell makes jokes about being overweight when you're in the middle of eating Thanksgiving dinner? Rude as F.